day everyone! Today, we're going to talk about Anglo-American literature, its definition and examples. Also, we're going to talk about the Chronicles of Narnia and the Bob Dylan's Mr. Tambourine. So without further ado, let's get started. Anglo or English literature. Anglo is a prefix indicating of a relation to the Angles, England, the English people, or the English language, such as in the term Anglo-Saxon language. It is often used alone, somewhat loosely, to refer to the people of British Isle descent in the Americas, New Zealand, and Australia. The name England is derived from the Old English name Englaland, which means Land of Angels. In Old English literature, around 450 to 1100, encompasses literature written in Old English in Anglo-Saxon England and the language closer to modern German than modern English. In English Renaissance, around 1500s to 1660, is the Elizabethan and Jacobean period around 1558 to 1625, and also the late Renaissance around 1625 to 60. The English Renaissance was a cultural and artistic movement in England, dating from the late 15th and 16th centuries to the 17th centuries. The Renaissance saw the rise of English theatrical drama, most notably William Shakespeare, but also from the authors such as Christopher Marlowe. In the modern period, the English literary modernism developed out of a general sense of delusionment with Victorian-era attitudes of certainty, conservatism, and belief in the idea of objective truth. American literature is the literature written or produced in the area of United States and its preceding colonies. During its early history, America was a series of British colonies on the eastern coast of the present-day United States. Its literary tradition begins as linked to the broader tradition of English literature. Literary period in American literature. During the Revolutionary or Age of Reason around 1750 to 1800s, patriotism grows, instills pride, creates common agreement about issues, national missions, and the American character. During the Romanticism around 1800s to 1860, value feeling and intuition over reasoning, journey away from corruption of civilian, and limits of rational thought towards the integrity of nature and freedom of the imagination help instill proper gender behavior for men and women. During American Renaissance or Transcendentalism around 1840 to 1860, Transcendentalist, true reality is spiritual, idealist, self-reliance, and individualism. Anti-Transcendentalist use symbols to great effect. Sin, pain, and evil exist. Some consider the anti-transcendentalist to be the dark romantics or Gothic. During Realism, around 1855 to 1900, period of Civil War and post-war period, social realism aims to change a specific social problem. Aesthetic realism, art that insists on detailing the world as one sees. During the moderns, around 1900s to 1950, in pursuit of the American dream, admiration for America as land of Eden, optimism and importance of the individual. During Harlem Renaissance, parallel to modernism around 1920s, allusions to African American spirituals, uses structures of blues songs in poetry, repetition, superficial stereotypes revealed to be complex characters. During postmodernism around 1950 to present, erodes distinctions between classes of people, insists that value are not permanent but only local or historical, mixing of fantasy with non-fiction, blurs lines of reality for readers, usually humorless. Now, let's talk about the examples of Anglo-American literature. First is The Catch in the Rye, novel by J.D. Salinger published in 1951. The summary of this is that the novel details 2 days in the life of 16-year-old Holden Caulfield after he has been expelled from prep school. Confused and delusioned, Holden searches for truth and rails against the phoniness of the adult world. The author or writer, Jerome David Salinger or J.D. Salinger, is important in Anglo-American literature because he is an American writer whose novel The Catch in the Rye, 1951, won critical acclaim and devoted admirers, especially among the post-World War II generation of college students. His corpus of published works also consists of short stories that were printed in magazines, including the Saturday Evening Post, Esquire, and the New Yorker. The novel was included on Time's 2005 list of the 100 best English language novels written since 1923. It was named by Modern Library and its readers as one of the 100 best English language novels of 20th century. It has been frequently challenged in the court for its liberal use of profanity and portrayal of sexuality. And in the 1950s and 60s, it was the novel that every teenage boy wants to read. Next is The Great Gatsby. It is a novel published in 1925 by American writer F. Scott Fitzgerald. Unsuccessful upon publication, the book is now considered a classic of American fiction and has often been called the Great American Novel. This novel reflects America in the 20s, Jazz Age. The Great Gatsby vividly captures its historical moment, the economic boom of post-war America, the new jazz music, and the free-flowing illegal liquor. The analysis of this novel, its center is a remarkable rags-to-riches story of a boy from a poor farming background who has built himself upon to fabulous wealth. Also, The Great Gatsby, F. Scott Fitzgerald's third book, stands as the supreme achievement of his career. This exclamatory novel of the Jazz Age has been acclaimed by generations of readers. The story is of the fabulous wealthy Jay Gatsby and his new love for the beautiful Daisy Buchanan, of lavish parties on Long Island at the time when the New York Times noted, "Gin was the national drink and sex the national obsession." It is an exquisitely crafted tale of America in the 1920s. Beowulf is an epic novel, a hero who fights monster Grendel, Grendel's mother, and the fire-breathing dragon. Beowulf's boast and encounters reveals him to be the strongest, ablest warrior around. In his youth, he personifies all of the best values of the heroic culture. Beowulf was composed by an unknown Anglo-Saxon poet around 700 AD. Much of its material has been in circulation in oral narrative for many years. The Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian peoples had invaded the island of Britain and settled there several hundred years earlier, bringing with them several closely related Germanic languages that would evolve into Old English. "1984" is a novel by George Orwell, published in 1949 as a warning about the menace of totalitarianism. The novel is set in an immature future world that is dominated by 3 perpetually wearing totalitarian policy states. The book's hero, Winston Smith, is a minor party functionary in one of these states. His longing for truth and decency leads him to secretly rebel against the government. Smith has a love affair with a like-minded woman, but they are both arrested by the thought police. The ensuing imprisonment, torture, and re-education of Smith are intended not merely to break him physically, but or make him submit, but to root out his independent mental existence and his spiritual dignity. Orwell's warning of the danger of totalitarianism made a deeper impression on his contemporaries and upon subsequent readers, and the book's title and many of his coinages, such as Newspeak, became bywords of the modern political abuses. This book offers political satirist George Orwell's nightmarish vision of a totalitarian, bureaucratic world and one poor stiff's attempt to find individuality. The brilliance of the novel is Orwell's prescience of modern life, the ubiquity of television, the distortion of the language, and his ability to construct such as a thorough version of hell. Required reading for students since it was published, it ranks amongst the most terrifying novels ever written. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare early in his career, about two young star-crossed lovers whose deaths ultimately reconcile their feuding families. An age-old vendetta between two powerful families erupts into bloodshed. A group of masked montages risk further conflict by gate-crashing a Capulet party. A young lovesick Romeo Montages falls instantly in love with Juliet Capulet, who is due to marry her father's choice, the country Perreras. William Shakespeare is an English poet and playwright, regarded as the greatest writer in the English literature. And now, we're going to talk about the Chronicles of Narnia. The Chronicles of Narnia is a series of 7 fantasy books written by C.S. Lewis, known as The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, written in 1950, that narrates the story of the 4 ordinary children, namely Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensie, as they evacuated from London because of the outbreak of World War II. They discover a wardrobe in Professor Diggory Creek's house that leads to the magical land of Narnia. These children met the talking lion named Aslan and helped to free Narnia from the hands of the evil White Witch. The children become kings and queens of this newly found land and establish the Golden Age of Narnia, leaving a legacy to be rediscovered in later books. The second book is The Prince Caspian, written in 1951. It is a story about the Pevensie children's second trip to Narnia. They are drawn back by the power of Susan's horn, blown by Prince Caspian to summon help in hours of need. As the Narnia they knew before, 1,300 years later is gone. Caspian has fled into the woods to escape his uncle Miraz, who has usurped the throne. The children set out once again to save Narnia. The third book is The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, written in 1952. It is a story about Edmund and Lucy Pevensie, along with their priggish cousin, Eustace Scrub, return to Narnia, 3 years after their last departure. Once there, they joined Caspian's voyage on the ship Dawn Trader to find the 7 lords who were banished when Miraz took over the throne. This perilous journey brings them face to face with many wonders and dangers as they sail towards Aslan's country at the edge of the world. The Silver Chair, written in 1953. The first Narnia book not involving Pevensie children, focusing instead on Eustace, several months after the voyage of the Dawn Trader. Aslan calls Eustace back to Narnia along with his classmate Jill Pole. They are given 4 signs to aid them in the search of Prince Caspian's son, Rilian, who disappeared 10 years earlier on the quest to avenge his mother's death. 50 years have passed in Narnia since the events from the voyage of the Dawn Trader. Eustace is still a child, but Caspian, barely an adult in the previous book, is now an old man. Eustace and Jill With the help of Puddleglum, the Marsh Wiggle face danger and betrayal on their quest to find Rillian. The Horse and His Boy, written in 1954. The story takes place during the reign of the Pevensies in Narnia, an era which begins and ends in the last chapter of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The protagonists, a young boy named Shasta and a talking horse named Bree, both begin in a bondage in the country of Colormen. By chance, they meet and plan their return to Narnia and freedom. Along the way, they meet Aravis and her talking horse Win, who are also fleeing to Narnia. The Magicians Nephew, written in 1955, serves as a prequel and presents Narnia origin story, how Aslan created the world and how evil first entered it. Diggory Crick and his friend Polly Plummer stumble into different worlds by experimenting with magic rings given to them by Diggory's uncle. In the dying world of Charn, they awaken Queen Jadis, and another world turns out to be the beginning of the Narnian world. And finally, The Last Battle, written in 1956, is the story about the end of the world of Narnia. Jill and Eustace return to save Narnia from the Ape Ship, who tricks Puzzle the donkey into impersonating the lion Aslan, thereby precipitating a showdown between the Calomernes and King Trian. This leads to the end of Narnia as it is known throughout the series, but allows Aslan to lead the characters to the true Narnia. The Chronicles of Narnia is a series of fictional realm of Narnia, a world full of fantasy, world of magic, mythical beasts, and talking animals. It narrates the adventure of various children who play central roles in the unfolding history of the Narnian world. The story became so popular because of their mythical qualities, the way they deal with the marvelous and supernatural, exploring basic issues of existence such as origins, endings, meanings, and purpose. And on some readers, the Chronicles appeal to them because of the story's connection with Christianity. But on the other hand, in Lewis' essay and letters, Lewis said frequently that he did not intend the story to be allegories and did not regard them as such, as Lewis preferred thinking of them as supposal. Hence, Lewis wrote to the 5th grade class of Maryland, he said, "Let us suppose that there were a land like Narnia, and that the Son of God, as he became a man in our world, become a lion there, and then imagine what would happen." Lewis believed that the series should be read in chronological order of the events covered in the book, but most readers, critics, and scholars believe that they should be read in the order the book were published, such as The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in 1950, Prince Caspian in 1951, The Voyage of the Dawn Trader in 1952, The Silver Chair in 1953, The Horse and His Boy in 1954, The Magician's Nephew in 1955, and The Last Battle in 1956. The earliest life of the author C.S. Lewis has a resemblance with his fantasy books, The Chronicles of Narnia, because like Caspian and Rillian, Lewis lost his mother at an early age, spending much of his youth in English boarding school, similar to those attended by the Pevensie children, Eustace Crabbe and Jill Pole. And just like how Pevensie stayed with a professor in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the goddaughter of Lewis named Lucy stayed with him at his home in the Kilns near Oxford. As the World War II broke out and many children were evacuated from London and other urban areas because of the German air raids. Lewis' imagination at a very young age gave birth to the Narnia. As a child, he made up a world called Animal Land, which was full of talking animals. He also wrote stories about noble, talking mice and rabbits who wore armor and fought cats instead of dragons. When Lewis reached teenage age, images of a queen on a sledge and a faun carrying parcels and an umbrella came into his mind that both can be seen on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Michael Ward proposed a theory that Lewis deliberately constructed the Chronicles of Narnia out of the imagery of the seven heavens. On 16th century, according to the astronomers before Copernicus, the seven heavens contained the seven planets which revolve around Earth and exerted influences over people and events, and even the metals on the Earth's crust. In Ward's book titled The Planet Narnia, published in 2008, he claims that in The Lion, the child's protagonists become monarchs under sovereign Jove. In Prince Caspian, they harden under strong Mars. In The Zone Trader, they drink light under searching Sol. In The Silver Chair, they learn obedience under subordinate Luna. In The Horse and His Boy, they come to love poetry under elegant Mercury. In The Magician's Nephew, they gain life-giving fruit under fertile Venus. And in The Last Battle, they suffer and die under chilling Saturn. The Chronicles of Narnia's 7 books have been in continuous publication since 1956, selling over 100 million copies in 47 languages, and with editions in Braille. The Chronicles of Narnia has been adapted for radio, television, the stage, film, and even in computer games. Robert Allen Zimmerman, better known as Bob Dylan, was an American folk rock singer-songwriter in the 1960s, who infused the intellectualism of classic literature and poetry into the lyrics of rock and roll, which had previously been primarily concerned with boy-girl romantic innuendo. Hailed as the Shakespeare of his generation, Dylan sold tens of millions of albums and wrote more than 500 songs, which were produced by more than 2,000 artists and performed all over the world, setting the standard for lyric writing. In 2016, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. He grew up in the northeastern Minnesota mining town of Hibbing, where his father co-owned Zimmerman Furniture and Appliances Co. Taken with the music of Hank Williams, Little Richard, Elvis Presley, and Johnny Ray, he acquired his first guitar in 1955 at the age of 14, and later, as a high school student, played in a series of rock and roll bands. In 1959, just before enrolling in the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, he served a brief stint playing piano for rising pop star Bobby Vee. He discovered Dinkytown, Minneapolis' Bohemian district, while in college. He began performing folk music in the cafe houses, adopting the surname Dylan, after the Welsh poet Dylan Thomas, after being inspired by beat poetry and folk singer Woody Guthrie. Mr. Tambourine Man is a song written by Bob Dylan, released as the first track of the acoustic side of his March 1965 album, Bringing It All Back Home. Due to the song's popularity, Dylan recorded it several times, and it has appeared on numerous compilation albums. It has been translated into other languages, and has appeared in television shows, films, and books. The song has been performed and recorded by many artists, including The Byrds, Judy Collins, Melanie, Odetta, and Steve Wonder, among others. However, among them, The Byrds' version released on June 21, 1965 marked the beginning of the folk rock revolution. In just few months, The Byrds had become a household name, with a #1 single and smash hit album that married the ringing guitar and backbeat of the British invasion with the harmonies and lyrical depth of folk to create an entirely new sound. The Byrds also recorded the second verse of Dylan's song, which has 4 verses. Both Dylan's and the Byrds version have made appearances on list of the greatest song of all time, including both on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. Both versions received Grammy Hall of Fame awards. The song has a bright, expansive melody and is known for its surrealistic imagery, which was inspired by the artists such as a French poet Arthur Rimbaud and Italian filmmaker Federico Fellini. The lyrics call on the title character to play a song and the narrator will follow. Interpretations to the lyrics have been included on Panean to drugs such as LSD, a call to a singer's muse, a reflection of the audience demands on the singer, and religious interpretations.